Hurricane Melissa is a Category 3 major hurricane right now. It may be downgraded to a Category 2. There's a hurricane hunter flight out here. Hurricane reconnaissance flights will not fly through a tropical cyclone while they're over land for safety reasons. But as soon as this thing gets back over land, the hurricane reconnaissance flight may fly through it. The eye is probably an hour or two away from re-emerging over the open waters between the southern Bahamas and Cuba, as you can see right here. Now, this is going to give the storm a chance to re-intensify, although there are some factors working against that re-intensification, as I said. We've got wind shear and dry air trying to punch into the western side of the system. That's why you're starting to see a tilt, starting to have an easterly tilted cyclone. Also, as cyclones pick up in speed, they tend to expand, and that eye wall tends to collapse. The eye tends to collapse. So I do think that this storm is done strengthening. I don't think we're going to get a massive re-intensification when it goes back over the open waters. If anything, it'll maintain its strength for a little bit before getting weaker. It is being ejected up into the northern Atlantic towards Bermuda. I am expecting Bermuda to get some high winds as the storm passes. Nothing major. Very little storm surge or flooding potential with how fast the storm will likely be moving past Bermuda. Taking a look at what's going on in the States right now, we have a big upper level low spinning. We're really centered over Missouri. This is going to be moving up over the next few days, really over the next 48 hours into the northeastern states, so up here towards New England. And it's going to bring with it a lot of rainfall into the mid-Atlantic, into New England, and potentially some snowflakes up and down the Appalachian Range. I'm not expecting any sort of accumulating snow, maybe a tiny bit, but I think really just some flakes up into the higher elevations. If we were to take a look at the rainfall we're expecting over the next 72 hours in the States, well, let's take a look at the next 5 days in the States. It's all out here in the Northeast and then through portions of the Ohio Valley. And then up here in the Pacific Northwest, lots of snow for the high elevations and lots of cold rain for the low elevations. Taking a quick look at our updated 06C GFS, here's what's going on. You can see this storm system moving off into the Northeast. If this had been a little slower, it actually may have tugged Melissa into shore. So luckily, that maintained its speed. We can clearly see we have a storm system also bringing a lot of moisture up here to the Pacific Northwest. As we move forward in time, we really dry up in the States, okay? So honestly, it looks like everyone's gonna have a very, at least dry Halloween, maybe portions of inner New England, inner upper New England, and then the far reaches of Northwestern Pacific Northwest will be a little bit wet for Halloween, but for the most part, looks like a beautiful Halloween for everyone. I can't remember the last time there was barely any precipitation falling in the States for Halloween. Moving forward into the end of this weekend, we do get a low pressure system beginning to develop in the northern Gulf, and it will try to make its way up the coast as we get into early next week. This is going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Actually, in the latest GFS, this thing kind of falls apart. It doesn't even attempt to move up the coast. So that's interesting. And if that does happen, we'll stay drier out here in the southeast and up and down the eastern coast. Now, as we get into late next week and next weekend, pretty intense Alberta Clipper is going to try to make its way down through the northern plains, upper Midwest, and then into inner New England. This could actually lead to a lot of snowfall, potentially even for portions of the mid-Atlantic if we get this trough amplified enough. Taking a look at the latest total snowfall in Cuba on the GFS. Obviously, it's expecting a lot of snowfall for portions of the upper northern plains, upper Midwest, and then inner New England here. This is feet of snow if this were to happen. We're seeing this go back and forth. Some models bring it farther south. Some models bring it farther to the north. So we'll see. I mean, I think there's a small chance we get the trough a little more amplified and to bring snowfall into the Ohio Valley. Small chance. If we were to take a look at our 500 millibar height anomaly, what's going on here, and I'm going to push out into North America. If we were to take a look at this, obviously we've got some troughing, some storminess down in the eastern U.S. right now and a ridge building up out west. As we move forward in time, we're continuing to see this troughing dive down into the east, bringing more cold air and storminess down there. Likely the storminess, so as I said at the beginning of next week, is going to remain in the Gulf. We'll have to see if the 000, the 06Z is right, if this low pressure system wants to kind of float around here in the Gulf, or if it wants to try to make a run up the coast, bringing moisture and potentially maybe even some more flakes up into Appalachia. Getting into the middle of next week, we're continuing to see this pattern of ridging out west. Very warm, dry conditions out west and cold, potentially moist conditions out east. Now, again, for most of November, we are expecting, or at least through the first half of November, we're expecting cooler, stormier conditions out east, drier, warmer conditions out west. So I'm not surprised to see this at all. Now, really quickly, severe weather-wise, I actually do want to talk about this for a second, and we can get back into the hurricane here in a second. Taking a look at our SPC outlook, day one, we do have a categorical risk out here up and down the coast of North Carolina and Virginia. If we go to our 4 panel here, it's really just a wind threat, no tornado threat. Going into our categorical severe weather outlook for tomorrow, we do have that threat moving a little bit farther up to the north. I do think we could get a slight risk out of this. This is going to be portions of New Jersey, PA, Delaware, Eastern Maryland, coastal Virginia, and again, coastal North Carolina. And if we were to take a look at our 4-panel on this, we do, again, just see a wind threat. I do think there is the possibility, though, of a tornado threat, of an upgrade to a slight risk. If we were to look at, and I'll go to our NAM 3K. If we were to go to our NAM 3K and let's take a look at our 850 millibar height and wind, we're to fast forward this a little bit. You can see we get a pretty decent jet streak out here. Some pretty decent shear moving up along the coast here. We could have actually some decent velocity and rotational shear. I think that could give us some spin ups here. So I would say Thursday, let's watch out for the potential for some spin ups out there, small potential for some tornadoes out there in the mid-Atlantic and then through coastal New England potentially as we get into Friday. Right now, though, the SPC does not have that labeled. Temperature wise, as I said, and we'll go right into here. If we look at our temperature anomalies and we'll move down into the states, it's cold out here. It's cold down in for a lot of people in the plains and out east. This is getting into Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday this weekend. Halloween looks to be cool for many people in the plains and out east, and a little bit warm for the Rockies and out west. As we get into early next week, we see that ridge beginning to build out west, and we're starting to get a heat dome out west. So unfortunately, we got a lot of early season snow in the Rockies out there. Some of that's probably going to melt, and it looks like we want some more cool air, again, trying to push its way down into the mid-Atlantic portions of the southeast and especially New England as we get into the end of next week and next weekend, and then here we go again. The GFS is continuing to throw a lot of cold air, a lot of troughing, and potentially a more stormy pattern out east as we push through the first 2 weeks of November. This is kind of what we expected to see. Taking a look at what's going on up in our stratosphere, this is pretty important. Taking a look at what's going on in our stratosphere because we want to see how cold is this winter actually going to be. A lot of people are interested in this. Northern hemisphere, we've got a lot of blocking over the Arctic right now. And what happens when you get a lot of blocking, a lot of warm anomalies up over the stratospheric polar vortex, or up in the stratosphere over the Arctic, is your polar vortex begins to slow, begins to wobble, and that's when you can have big Arctic outbreaks down in the States. We're continuing to see these warm anomalies up over the Arctic at least through the beginning of November, and that could lead to a big dump of cold air mid to late November that could kind of circle around, whether it be in Siberia or into the States. If it's in Siberia, we'd expect that cold air to move kind of around the globe and enter the States. So I do think mid to late November, early December, we could see a decent Arctic outbreak that has to do with the warm anomalies we've been seeing up in the stratosphere recently. Let's see what our Canadian seasonal is looking like right now for temperatures. Getting into November, it's expecting cooler conditions, plains and out east. Not surprising. Getting into December, January, February, it's expecting more of a moderate La Nina look with below average temperatures through the northern tier states and more mild conditions in the southern tier states. Now, the Canadian did pretty well last year with its monthly temperature anomaly outlooks. So, I would say this is a decent model to look at. Looking out 30, 90, 120 days is always, it's never going to be perfect. It's impossible, but the Canadian, it does a pretty good job at seeing what's going on in the atmosphere and climatologically and giving us a pretty good guesstimate at how our conditions could look like as we push through winter.